Vertical angles. I like vertical angles because I think they're easy. And I'll explain something that they make me think of in a minute that'll hopefully help. But vertical angles. Each of the pairs of vertical angles made by two intersecting lines. So, if I have two lines, boom, there's a line. Well, there's the line. And there's a line. They intersect, correct? Yeah. Remember, intersecting does not need to be perpendicular, it just needs to be crossing, right? Vertical angles would be like those guys. There's another set of vertical angles here, though. Right here and right here. Do you notice that I marked those ones differently? The ones with two arcs versus the ones with one arc. Congruent. Angles are congruent when they have the same measure. And the vertical angles theorem says vertical angles are congruent to each other. So these two side-to-side angles, those ones are congruent, meaning they're the same measure. And these two up and down ones are congruent, meaning they're the same measure. Okay? Now, let me show you. Sometimes I call these kissy-fishy angles, and I want to explain why. These were some jammies that literally my daughter had when she was like 2 or 3. And do you see the fishies kissing? Those are the angles. They're the angles that like kiss in the middle there. You get that? They're like kissy-fishy angles. So, anyways, if that helps you remember, great. If it doesn't help you remember, then find a way to remember. But I may call them kissy-fishy angles, and I'm referring to vertical angles. No, those ones were from like Nordstrom or something. I got them on Amazon for like $8. Yeah. Okay, so we may be using complementary angles. We may be using supplementary angles. We may be using angle addition postulate and other things that we've talked about. But we're adding vertical angles to this mix. So, do you see that I have two angles? I'm sorry, do you see that I have two lines that are intersecting here? Okay. I need to find angle 1, angle 2, and angle 3. So, what am I going to do? I'm going to label my answers. The measure of angle 1 equals. The measure of angle 2 equals, and the measure of angle 3 equals, because those are the three answers that this question is looking for. Correct? They give me one angle. What's the kissy-fishy or the vertical angle to that? It's angle 2. So if this angle is 124, what is that one? So measure of angle 2 is 124 what? Degrees. Okay. Now I know that angles 1 and 3 are also vertical angles. Does that mean they're also 124 degrees? No. But I do know that whatever angle 1 is, angle 3 also is. Right? So now is where I'm going to use that linear pair idea. Remember that? I could do it this way. I could do it that way. I could do it any number of ways. If I did it this way, are you clear there? I feel like I'm a little out of focus there. If I looked this way, how can I find the measure of angle 1? Right, because angle 1 plus angle 1 plus 124 is 180. So 180 minus 124, what is that? $56 degrees. What did I just find? Angle 1, and therefore also angle 3. And there's my answers. So? Okay. You try number 2. I think it's a little hard to read, but I'm assuming that says 67 degrees. Does it say 57? Let's say, okay, we'll agree that this says 57 degrees. Yeah? We'll call it 57 degrees and go ahead and find angles 1, 2, and 3, knowing that that other angle is 57 degrees. And make sure to label your answers appropriately. Which angle do I know right off the bat? 2. Angle 2, because that's the congruent angle to 57 degrees. So angle 2 is 57 degrees. Okay? So let's say I wanted to find angle 1 now. If I cover up this side, I know that angle 1 plus this 57 degrees is equal to 180, right? So 180 minus 57 will give me 1 what? So angle 1 is 123 degrees. Which angle is congruent to angle 1? Angle 3. So that one is also 123 degrees. So? By the way, with my markings here, sometimes you might see a little tick mark on these. Just means the same thing, just different ways of marking that they're the same. You just find the ones with the matching markings. Okay. Really quickly, before we move on to the next ones, I want to talk about congruent angles, or the word congruent itself. We talked about congruent up here. Does anyone know what the symbol for congruent is? It's like an equal sign with a little squiggle on top. Okay? And I think it's important that you know when you use that symbol. If I'm talking about the measure of an angle, I don't use the congruent symbol. If I'm talking about the measure of an angle, I have an exact answer, so I give an equal sign. If I'm talking about two angles, for example here, angle 1 and angle 3, if I'm not talking about their measures, I'm just talking about the two angles themselves, just using their names, not their measures, that's when I use the congruent signs. Okay? That's when I use the congruent signs. It's kind of like saying the names of the two angles, and then you use the congruent, but if you use the measure of the angle, you use an actual equal sign there. Okay? So in number 1, I could say what is congruent to what? Angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. But if I wanted to talk about measures, I would say the measure of angle 1 is equal to the measure of angle 3. As soon as I'm talking about measures, I use an equal sign, not a congruent symbol. Okay, so a little slightly different use. All right, number 3, solve for y. Now they have two angles labeled, and I know those two angles are what? They're congruent. Their measures are going to be equal. How do I know that? Because they're vertical angles. They're kissy fishies, right? So if their measures are going to be equal, what kind of an equation could I set up? 4y minus 42 equals 2y. So I need to get my y's together. If I move my 2y over here, just because I like my letters on the left, that gives me 2y minus 42 equals what? 0. Now what would I do? Move the 42 over by adding it. So 2y equals 42. Then what? Divide by 2. And what does y equal? 21. Is that a degree measure? No. But if I needed to find the degree measure, could I? Just plug that 21 back in here. Or here. Do I need to plug it in both places if I want to find both angles? No, because once I've found one of the angles, don't I know that the other angle is going to be the same? So I can shorten my process there. All right, you try number 4. Well, keep in mind, these two problems aren't asking for angle measures. They're just asking you to find what x is and find what y is. 1 and 2, they were asking for the actual angles. So here we're talking about two angles also, aren't we? So what's my equation going to be? 2x minus 11 equals what? How do I solve that? Add 11. So 2x equals, what's 105 plus 111? 116, and now what? Divide by 2, and what does x equal? Is that a degree measure? So 58 is my answer. So? All right, last two. Excuse me. Solve for x and y. So it's kind of like two problems built into one. All right? Now, I know that this angle right here has an x in it. Yeah? I cannot set up an equation and set it equal to something that has a y with it. And I can't set up an equation that has an x and a y in it because I can't find an answer if I have two different letters in it. So I don't want to talk about the fact right now that these two angles form a linear pair and would equal 180. I don't want to go there right now. What I want to know is what this measure is, because then I can solve for x all by itself. How can I find out what that one is? Well, if I look right here, don't I have a linear pair? So 180 minus 63 is what? 117? Yeah? So, if I know that that's 117 degrees, I can set 2x minus 17 equal to 117 degrees. What could be another option if I wanted to find y first, perhaps? Couldn't I set y plus 23 equal to 63? And I could find y that way. As it is here, what am I going to do? Add 17. That says that 2x equals what? 134. Divide by 2. And x equals what? 67. Is that a degree measure? No. So? Now, I have a couple different options for y. I could set the y plus 23 equal to 63. Or, since I know that that's 117 degrees, couldn't I say y plus 23 plus 117 equals 180? Because they're a linear pair, that angle addition thing. Yeah? Okay, so either one. I think it might be easiest to set those vertical angles equal. So if I say y plus 23 equals 63, what am I going to do to solve that? Subtract 23. And what does y equal? 40. Again, not a degree measure. Now, I want to just show you really quick. This is the way Miss Boykins did it. Just to kind of show you, she started off by finding the y angle there. or the y measurement, I should say. So she started off with the y plus 23 equals 63 and got that answer. Then she used 63 and 2x minus 17, and what did she do with those? Set them equal to 180 because it's a linear pair. So you have different options because we've learned a few different things of whether we're adding angles or whatever we want to do there. Okay? So you do number 6. I want you to find x and find y. See what you can do to find x and y. What letter do you think is going to be easiest to find first? Probably x. You ready? Not yet? All right, so we said x would be easier to find first, right? Now I see that this angle and this angle are going to be congruent, correct? Which means I can say 2x plus 5 equals what? 3x minus 33. So if I want to get x by itself, let's get our x's together. I'll go ahead and go to the right, just because that keeps things positive and makes it just a plain old x. So 5 equals x minus 33. And what would I do now? Add 33. So what does x equal? 38. Is that a degree measure? No. Okay. Now, does that help me find y? Well, if I want to find y, I kind of want to set these two angles equal. But I can't because I don't know what this one is. Okay, so let's think about a different way. Can I plug this back in to find one of those degree measures? Yes. Now, keeping in mind that these two are congruent, they're going to have the same measure, right? So it doesn't matter which one I plug it into. So I'm going to plug it into the top one because it has smaller numbers. So 2 times 38 plus 5. What is 2 times 38? Anybody? 76 plus 5 is 81. So this angle right here is 81 degrees. What do I know about these two angles? They're a linear pair. So I'm going to use that. So what can I set up to help me get that? I can say that 4y minus 1 plus what? 81 equals what? 180. So let's see, what's negative 1 and 81? That would be 80. And now what would I do? Subtract 80. I'm running off the bottom there. So 4y equals 100. I'm going to come up here because I can't write anymore there. 4y equals 100. I'm going to divide by what? So what does y equal? Is that a degree measure? No, but there's my y value. Okay, any questions there? All right, your homework has posted on Google Classroom. Happy studying.